Tom Cotton, an Air Force veteran, spoke to J.D. Durkin at Cheddar about the terrorist attack, the current state of foreign policy, as well as the future of healthcare and tax reform. Let's take a look.
All right, we are joined this morning by Arkansas Senator Tom Cotton. Senator, it's great to have you join us here on Cheddar.
Good to be on with you, J.D.
A very unfortunate tragedy last night in my home city of New York in Lower Manhattan. I'd love to get your response to the news out of New York.
Yeah, a terrible terrorist attack in which so far 8 people have been killed and many more hospitalized. Obviously, right now my main thoughts are with the families of those who have been affected and who have been terrorized. Still relatively early for these things. I know the terrorist has been stabilized and coming out of surgery, so we'll see what he has to say and also see where the FBI's investigation leads. But it's an important reminder that even as we roll up the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria, and we make some gains against Al-Qaeda and its remnants, they continue to be a threat against us all around the world, and the vigilance that we need to have from law enforcement, from intelligence, from our military.
What particular assurances do you give your own constituents who perhaps get a little increased fear after we hear tragedies unfold like this? Are there specific messages that you like to send to the people you represent?
Well, I work almost every day to try to stop these kind of terrorist attacks, to give our men and women in the intelligence community and law enforcement, military, the authority and the money they need to be able to stop them. A lot of that work happens behind the scenes. It's classified work in the Armed Services Committee or the Intelligence Committee. But I'm constantly working to make sure that they have the money and the authority they need, and they have the right kind of culture in those agencies, the culture that encourages some risk-taking to being out on the edge all around the world. They have the legal ability they need to track terrorists around the world here in the United States. Obviously, it's a long and tough fight, but it's something that I work on every single day and something I've really been dedicated to doing ever since 9/11.
The president has tweeted about his calls for what he calls an increase, a step up of extreme vetting. And know that in many capacities, Senator, you're a foreign policy advisor to the president. You have a close working relationship with him. What's your take regarding this administration's view of extreme vetting, specifically in the aftermath?
Well, we need to do everything we can to make sure the people that we admit to this country, whether permanently as green card holders and ultimately citizens, or temporarily as visa holders, whether they're students or tourists, temporary guest workers, what have you, are not going to threaten our people. Unfortunately, it looks like this terrorist came here 6 or 7 years ago as part of something called the diversity lottery. I don't support the diversity lottery. In fact, I have legislation that would repeal it and that would refocus our immigration system on higher skilled, highly educated, younger workers. I think those workers are not only more likely to contribute meaningfully to our economy and not compete with blue-collar, working-class Americans for the same jobs, but I also think they're most equipped, they're best prepared to assimilate and integrate into our society, less likely to turn on the very country that welcomed them to our shores.
Is it a fair assessment? Do you consider yourself a foreign policy advisor to the president?
Well,
because you certainly know many people use that terminology regarding your relationship.
So obviously, I care deeply about the security of this country. I left my law practice many years ago to join the Army to serve, and as a member of the Senate on the Armed Services and Intelligence Committee, I work on it almost every single day. I do work with the President a lot. He's our Commander-in-Chief, and we need him to be successful if we're going to keep the country safe. I support him when he's right. I try to change his mind when he's wrong, and sometimes I have to oppose him when I can't.
Sure.
But I do everything I can to try to make sure that our Commander-in-Chief, our Secretary of State, Secretary of Defense, or Secretary of Homeland Security, CIA Director, are moving in the right direction and get the support they need from Congress.
But it strikes me as a fascinating relationship, and I think to the recertifying of the Iran deal. There were close advisors to the president who work inside the White House who were telling him one thing. You get Senator Tom Cotton telling him something else, and it seems as if the president has ultimately decided to more side with the Tom Cotton side of things and perhaps even his own Secretary of Defense. Why do you think that's the case?
That was, I think, largely a matter of the president having the right instincts from the beginning, going back to the campaign trail. First conversation I ever had with the president, in fact, was about the nuclear deal with Iran in the days after it was completed in the summer of 2015. Earlier in this administration, while they were still standing up, getting all their people in place, conducting a more far-reaching review of their Iran policy, the president, I think, certified just to have a deliberate, well-considered policy in place. But when he decided not to certify the deal, to say that it's not in our national security interest, it was really him following his instincts from the very beginning. My position on this has been very well known. There are other people high up in the administration that supported my view as well. So the president had full airing of views. He had different courses of action presented to him. Ultimately, though, he made a decision based on where his views had been for 2 years, and he made the right decision.
If you were asked to serve your country in the capacity of working more closely with the administration to work perhaps for the president, is that something you would consider?
Well, the president hasn't asked me to do that. As far as I know, all those jobs are filled right now, so I'm very happy to be serving the people of Arkansas in the Senate.
Fair enough. I'll leave it at that. Let me ask you about the Mandate Relief Act, yourself and Senator Toomey. You've said that one of Obamacare's cruelest provisions is the individual mandate. Make the case as to why it's one of the cruelest provisions.
So the individual mandate is not just a cruel provision, it's a very unpopular one as well. 2/3 of Americans oppose it, and they're right to oppose it. So the mandate says you have to carry insurance, regardless of your financial situation, regardless whether that insurance fits your and your family's needs. And the IRS will fine you if you can't. So almost 7 million people in America last year paid that fine. That means that they already bore the hardships of not having insurance. So they had to pay for their bills, when they went in to see the doctor without getting it reimbursed by an insurance company. On top of that, they had to pay up to $2,000 in fines to the IRS. And that is a very regressive tax as well. More than 5 out of 6 households that pay that tax come from below the median income. So our bill says something very simple. If you make below the median income and your insurance rates have increased by more than 10%, the IRS is not going to be able to fine you for not being able to afford the insurance that Obamacare made unaffordable. If we can't get a vote on that bill itself, I think that we might want to consider including it as a part of the tax bill, because the Congressional Budget Office also says that it saves up to $3 billion for 10 years. So it would make a tax bill easier to pass, but it would also give relief to so many of the families that have suffered so much by the spiraling premiums of Obamacare. The last thing we should be doing is fining them when they're already suffering.
Do you think you would have support from the American people on it? On the one hand, would you have bipartisan support here in Washington to advance
I know we have support from the American people. Consistently, going back 7 years, the individual mandate in Obamacare is the most unpopular part. So I know we have support for that. And we're getting a growing number of Republican senators to support the idea of including it in the tax bill. The Democrats, I don't know. Some of them have said that they dislike the individual mandate, that they would like to oppose, that they would like to repeal it as well. But when the chips are down on the table on the Senate floor, we'll have to see if any of them come along or not.
Last topic for you here, Senator, tax reform. At what percentage do you think we'll honestly see something pass substantially? I work at the White House very heavily there. It's the hot topic of conversation, of course. Over here on Capitol Hill, how highly prioritized is it?
I feel pretty good about where things stand. The tax code is 60,000 pages. I think that's 10 times the size of the Bible.
It's a little big, yeah.
Not nearly as much good news. So working families and businesses around the country deserve to keep more of their money. And that'll be good for them, but also be good for our economy, because it'll help our economy grow more, create more jobs, help workers get a pay raise for the first time in many years. The tax code is too complicated as well. Too many politicians want to dictate how people spend their money. I'd rather just those people be able to keep their money and spend it in the ways they prefer. So this is always a complicated process, but it really is vital for our economy and for the security of America's working families that we give them back a little bit more of their money. So I feel pretty good about where things stand. It's going to be complicated, but I can say that it's right now moving in the right direction.
Sure. As a Republican, do you have severe deficit concerns, what this might do to the deficit?
Always, sure.
Yeah.
The deficit is trending back upwards. Our debt is now over $20 trillion. Now, I don't always agree with the smoke and mirrors budgeting that goes on in Washington that doesn't either reflect the political realities or economic realities as well. So I will take into account the budgetary estimates that anyone produces. I'll try to make the best decision from a reasonable, practical standpoint about what I think a tax bill will do for our economy. A good tax bill will pay for itself in part by producing more economic growth, by creating more jobs and creating more taxpayers. Now, you can't take that to the extreme. You can't say that any tax cut always will pay for itself. But a good tax bill, as we've seen time and time again, in the Reagan years and the Clinton years and the Bush years, goes a long way towards paying for itself.
It would be historic. First time since the Reagan administration. You were able to get it done. You feel confident you can?
It's been a long time in coming.
It has been, yeah.
But I feel pretty good about where things stand now.
Sounds good. Arkansas Senator Tom Cotton, thank you very much for taking the time, sir. Really good to have you join us this morning.
Thanks, JD. Appreciate it.